The Tom Woods Show, episode 1877.
Prepare to set fire to the index card of allowable opinion. Your daily dose of liberty education starts here. The Tom Woods Show.
Hey folks, Tom Woods here. John Bush is back with us today. I've known John since the first Ron Paul campaign, and you got to hand it to him. The guy works, and he works not just for his own benefit, but for everybody's. He has been a very, very energetic and productive activist for quite a long time. He's also become quite knowledgeable about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in particular. And I know we talked to Saifedean not too long ago, but I want to bring John on because he's got a couple things going on that I think members of my audience will find interesting. And also because I think he has a very good message for beginners or people who are curious about all this and they don't really know how to get started. John is just a regular guy who knows an awful lot about an awful lot. And so he's really, really good to talk to about stuff like this. So John, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me again, Tom.
There's a lot to talk about, man. There's always a lot to talk about, unfortunately. I wish we had a world which there was less to talk about, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
But let's talk crypto a little bit. I told you I had Saifedean on not too long ago, and I have a bunch more Bitcoiners listening to. Now I have anti-lockdown people. I got Bitcoin people now. In other words, I have influx of communities that, I had some of them in the past, but now I have more than ever. And what I would say I have more than ever of are newbies who are intrigued by Bitcoin, but it seems intimidating to them. They don't know what the first step is. And they feel like if I don't fully understand every last thing about it, I better not get into it. Now, I understand that kind of hesitation. I mean, you don't want to get involved in something you don't know about. But at the same time, I, to this day, do not know how my car runs at all. I honestly, I do not understand the technology that makes that thing move. I don't understand why an airplane flies through the air. I have no idea. And yet I get on them all the time. So at some level, you have to say, I don't have to know absolutely everything. So can we start right there? What would you advise somebody who's kind of a newbie but feels like, I just don't know enough to get started?
I've been there. I've been involved in the crypto space for 8 years now, since 2013. And I actually had an opportunity in 2011, 2012 to mine Bitcoin back when you could, mining is the verification of the transactions. You get rewarded with Bitcoin. That's how it's minted. I had an opportunity to mine Bitcoin on a laptop computer back when anyone could do it with minimal CPU power, and every block was cranking out 50 Bitcoin. I don't know, do the math on that with the $63,000 Bitcoin, but I hesitated and I said that exact same thing. I said, honestly, I don't have the time right now to look into it. I want to better understand it before I get involved. And I recognize that there's a lot of people that have missed out on a lot of opportunity because of that hesitation. And that's something that I'm focused on now. Being in this space for 8 years, I've seen all of the objections, the excuses, and the misunderstandings and the hesitations. And I'm hoping to kind of make people feel a little more confident in taking those first steps, because there still is a lot of opportunity to protect wealth and to grow wealth.
How did you yourself first get involved in all this? You said it's been 8 years. What happened in 2013?
Well, I've been an activist for like 20 years now and been into libertarianism and anarchism since the 2007 campaign, and learned about Rothbard. And we all know that little evolution, or devolution, some would say. But I was already into alternative currencies. Back then, me and my ex-wife, we would go to farmers markets and encourage the vendors to accept silver dimes. We were trying to push people to use silver as an alternative currency. So we already wanted to end the Fed. I came to the realization, if we wanted to end the Fed, rather than push for legislation, which has its benefits, and the good Dr. Ron Paul has done a lot of great work, but we should compete with the Fed and create alternative currencies. And if enough of us do that, the Fed will end itself, or at least we could insulate ourselves and not participate in unethical money. So I was already on that wavelength, and then cryptocurrency came along. And I was like, okay, there's a lot of potential here. It's totally decentralized. It's stateless money, and it gives people the ability to send value and do business globally without the need for a third party. This is a big deal. It was actually when I first used it to pay Derek Bros. He's like full on agorist all through and through, no taxes, no bank accounts, which can be a challenge, but he pulls it off. He was writing news articles for the Liberty Beat, this radio news service I was doing. And I was going to the HEB to wire him money via Western Union. They charged me like 7%. It was a pain in the butt, waste of my time to go wait in line. And I'd been talking about cryptocurrency, but I realized like, hey, why don't I just get some Bitcoin and send him Bitcoin for payment? And that when I actually used it, that was a big eureka for me as well. It wasn't just the philosophy and the potential that it had to disrupt the state. It was like, wow, this is good money. It's good, useful money.
One of my listeners started a site called spendabit.co, and all it is a search prompt. It looks like Google or DuckDuckGo. It looks like a search engine, but it's a search engine where you enter in a product that you might want to buy, and it comes up with a site that will accept Bitcoin in exchange for that product. So I thought that was an interesting little innovation that makes it easier for people to use Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. But now let's say a little something about that, because even that has become contentious matter. When I was first introduced to Bitcoin on a serious level, it was back in 2013 myself. I was in New Hampshire at the Liberty Forum that the Free State Project puts on. And a couple of the old hands at Bitcoin, youngsters now and youngsters then, but still, they'd been around a while in Bitcoin, took me to lunch and said, listen, man, you've got to learn about this and get into it. Yeah. And I was really impressed with them. And so at that point, I became at least a sympathizer. And then eventually I bought some and, I'm a bit invested in it, let's say. But the way they pitched it was, hey, at this moment, I can almost costlessly send X amount of money to some guy in China, just like that. And it doesn't matter. Borders, restrictions, governments, whatever, boom. And it was a guy on stage who just did it right in front of us. Yep. And you can go buy a cup of coffee with it or whatever, that it could be used as a medium of exchange, which is what money is. The primary function of money is not to be a store of value. The primary function is to be a medium of exchange, to be used in transactions. But now, more recently, Saifedean was saying, well, the way it's evolved, that's not really its primary use now as an ordinary day-to-day medium of exchange. And then, so to me, I feel like that's been kind of a bait and switch.
Yeah, this is a great conversation to be had, and many people aren't aware. And many people, when they make their first Bitcoin transaction in commerce, they're kind of surprised by the transaction fee. I was actually at that Liberty Forum. It was Roger Ver, Eric Voorhees, and Charlie Shrem, early pioneers. One of them went to jail for a little while for money laundering, unfortunately, back when nobody even knew the government didn't know what the heck to do with it. They just knew they didn't like it.
Well, it was the first two of those guys who took me to lunch, and I've since had them both on my show.
Great people.
And then Roger, because of Bitcoin Cash, has become this lightning rod, and the internal fight among crypto people is some of the most vicious backbiting I've ever seen in any. And you and I know the libertarian world, so if it's worse than that,
well, there's money involved. It's a soap opera.
That's true.
Really.
That's true. Yeah.
But yeah, I was among the early evangelists, and the value proposition used to be, hey, you can send money, even a micro transaction of $1 with little to no fee. And this is so groundbreaking that we'll be able to bring banking to the unbanked. Imagine impoverished folks in a third world country that need to send money back home because they're migrant workers. Maybe they only make $20 worth of money a week, right? And they want to send a transaction. Well, along the way, Bitcoin experienced some growing pains. Bitcoin's technology is the blockchain, which is really the greatest innovation, in my opinion. It's a decentralized public ledger. We don't have to rely on Chase Manhattan Bank or the Federal Reserve to maintain a ledger of who has what money, who's sent money where. We can trust consensus and mathematics that don't lie and don't change. And so this blockchain can only fit a certain amount of information on each block. The Bitcoin blockchain, each block is only 1 megabyte. And the information that's fit on that block is who has what Bitcoin, who sent what Bitcoin to what Bitcoin address. And so along the way, early on, it was like no big deal. We could send micropayments. You could send $1 and pay less than a penny or a couple pennies for the transaction fee, which goes to the miners. But as more people started using Bitcoin, there started to be congestion and competition. And so now all of a sudden, people are competing to have their transaction verified in that next block. A block gets added approximately every 10 minutes. Now, this transaction fee is a wonderful free market mechanism, a bidding system to find a price. It's the free market in action. It's absolutely beautiful, but because there's so many people bidding, trying to get in that next block, the transaction fee sometimes can be upwards of $9, $10, $18, $20, $30, especially when there's a big frenzy right now. Like the price is $63,000 for one Bitcoin, all-time highs we just experienced yet again. And everyone's like, I want to get in, I want to get in. And in order to buy crypto, in order to send a transaction, you have to throw on this transaction fee. So the value proposition for Bitcoin specifically has shifted from currency and store of value, had the potential, although it's still relatively volatile, although that's going down. It's shifted more to a digital gold of sorts rather than this radical undermining cryptocurrency. Still undermines, but not in the way that having cash would. And you mentioned Roger Ver. So these two camps evolved. One camp said, how do we solve the scaling problem? Well, let's create these off-chain networks called the Lightning Network. Let's upgrade the Bitcoin protocol. And so people will do these transactions on these little networks that they set up with one another, these channels, they exchange value, and then it clears on the blockchain every so often. This kind of defeats the original peer-to-peer purpose because you have to trust these channels that get set up. Well, Bitcoin Cash, on the other hand, this camp was like, let's just increase the block size. There was a huge debate. There was censorship even. The folks that wanted to increase the block size were getting censored. And then there's this corporation Blockstream that among its members has Larry Summers, right, the former Department of Treasury head, who he was one of the architects of the bailouts. He's involved in this Blockstream group. They're the ones that were pushing for this Lightning Network. Well, another camp was like, let's just fork away. So you have a hard fork, another free market mechanism in action. If we don't like things are going, we have enough people, we can move away from that blockchain and start our own blockchain. They simply increase the size of each block. And now the value proposition that we were originally selling people on, bringing banking to the unbanked, allowing people to send $1, like I'd give my son little $2 micropayments for doing the dishes. Can't do that with Bitcoin. It cost me $9 or $10. I can do it with Bitcoin Cash, and it costs a fraction of a penny to send a couple bucks for a little mini allowance for my son. So things have changed and evolved, and it's been the market in action, which I think is a pretty beautiful thing.
Now, because you said that, I'm going to get bombarded with people who say Bitcoin Cash is a blankety blank coin. You know what they would be saying there, and blah 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 blah. I'm going to get all this whole thing. All right, so for those people who want to tell me off because I allowed you to say what you just said, I'm going to put on the show notes page a link to a debate I held on this show between Jameson Lopp, the Bitcoin guy, and Roger himself for Bitcoin Cash. And they actually debated this like two civilized people.
Good.
Unlike the way it's ever been debated anywhere in any other form. I mean, it was really great. It was friendly, and I mean, not friendly like come on over to my house and we'll have a beer, but it was good enough. I mean, people learned something from it. So I'll link to that at tomwoods.com/1877. Well, anyway, this was all to lead into, you used to, as a way of illustrating this, you used to have go on road trips where it would be crypto only. And I just think, why is this guy doing this to himself, man? He's going to starve to death. Why are you doing this? So what was that like?
It was great. It was me and the mother of my kiddos, my two kids. We did about 3 or 4 of them. We called them unconventional road trips. We were actually sponsored by Bitcoin.com at one point. We had a converted school bus. We turned it into the Bitcoin.com school bus.
Oh, gosh, that sounds like something John Bush would do.
Yeah, it was nuts. You know, it was a lot of work, and we had our kids in tow. But, you know, we really were some of the early pioneers that were getting out there and putting the cryptocurrency ecosystem to the test. And so the goal was to spend only Bitcoin early on. This was before altcoins were a big thing. Eventually, we were using Dash and other altcoins. And the goal was to use only cryptocurrency to show how it could work. And so we would go out of our way to locate the restaurant that was actually accepting cryptocurrency directly. We leaned heavily on services like gyft.com that would allow you to use Bitcoin to purchase gift cards. So we'd like be in the line at Whole Foods. Okay, we have a $220 bill. Now that bill would be like $450 with inflation probably and the price of food going up. And then we would just send the Bitcoin to the gift application and we generate a Whole Foods gift card. Voila. And so We did a lot of work. Charlie Shrem, interestingly enough, he got one of the first hotels in New York City to accept Bitcoin. And we were the first people to spend with Bitcoin. But we would do meetups and all sorts of stuff and really learned a whole lot. And we located some stress points of growth and development. Things are completely changed. Everyone knows about crypto now, and so many people accept it. You can use crypto on PayPal and all sorts of stuff. So it's changed a whole lot. And that was, it was really good work that we were doing. We learned a lot.
I want to ask you the question that I'm trying to get at when I talk to Bitcoin people, because remember, I had that lunch in 2013, and the people talking to me were not just saying, hey, there's this interesting innovation out there you should know about because it's going to make the world 1.7% better. They were saying this is a potentially revolutionary thing that can bring down all these institutions we don't like and whatever. So can you explain what's the mechanism for that? What exactly is it about this technology that makes it so potent?
Okay, well, just the institution of money and wealth, right? But on top of that, it's the transfer of information, and it's doing so without an intermediary, without having to rely on a third party. And in most instances, to do information, to send money's really information. It's a representation of value. To have information, dollars represent that for most folks in the United States of America. It allows us to do so without a third party in a decentralized way that's uncontrollable. Now, mind you, I was much more idealistic about Bitcoin completely disrupting and ending the Fed. Right now, the central banks are creating their own central bank digital currencies. They're kind of co-opting this thing in a way. But nonetheless, we now, for the first time in history, have the ability to hold money, to send money without the government knowing about it, if we prefer that, and without the government being able to do anything whatsoever. At the end of the day, if you get found out and you're trying to hide this, or you're traveling from America to China with $250,000 worth of cryptocurrency and you're not declaring it like you're supposed to when you leave a country or have over $10,000, right? If they find it out, they can even take you to court and try to coerce you into giving up that money. But at the end of the day, if you have it encrypted and you don't share the password, you at least have the freedom now to choose if you're going to comply, right? That's if you get found out. There's so many people. I just read an article that like the IRS is losing out on a bunch of money, and Bitcoin's one of the big reasons. And it's totally disruptive. It's not just the use case for money. Now we see decentralized finance coming into play, where people can invest in shares of a company, for example, or they can lend liquidity to a money service business, and they can get interest in exchange for that. And then everyone's being censored on YouTube now, right? All these big names are getting taken down. There's been waves and waves of it. Well, now we have decentralized blockchain-based video, social media applications like Library that are uncensorable. And so it's creating the ability for people to not only transact money and value, but to put information in a way that cannot be censored. And we've really only begun to experience the innovations possible with blockchain technology.
Well, meanwhile, why do you think the price has been going up so high? There are a lot of people in Bitcoin now who couldn't care less about its allegedly revolutionary potential, whatever. What they see is just only an upside financially, and so they're getting involved in it. Why do you think this is? I mean, remember, it hit close to 20,000 back around 2017. Then it dipped a bit for a while. Now it's tripled that in record time. What's happening?
Well, that's a great question. So in 2017, it was more retail investors that were getting involved, and then the media was really covering it. So it created this, self-fulfilling prophecy. And then there was a massive correction because it wasn't sustainable organic growth that was taking place. It was FOMO. We talk about this in the workshop that we're going to be doing, fear of missing out and how to take your emotions out of it. This time around, because more legacy financial institutions, hedge funds, mega corporations, Fortune 500 corporations, because more people are understanding, like we've been preaching for over a decade, that the emperor wears no clothes, especially the financial emperor, the Federal Reserve Bank. More people are becoming aware that inflation is a very real thing, that the Federal Reserve and the Department of Treasury are aggressively debasing the United States dollar, as are other central banks and fiat currencies. Big institutional players, smart money, are recognizing that. And with COVID-19 was the great accelerator, as you know. There was a lot of industries that were in decay. There was a lot of stores that were on the verge of bankruptcy. And then COVID-19 came along and just pushed it over the edge. Well, with all of the stimulus money, and people focus on the stimulus that's passed by Congress and signed by the president. Meanwhile, the discount window is just cranking out trillions and trillions of dollars to the banks. That is now evident. And so what's driving the price now is mega institutions, mega corporations. There's this website, bitcointreasuries.org, for example, bitcointreasuries.org, and it shows Tesla, Square, MicroStrategy. These guys have 91,000 Bitcoin, $7.5 billion worth of Bitcoin that they're trading. And everyone's beginning to recognize it, that inflation is a real thing and we ought to be concerned. And there's been a paradox. The story has changed. Early on, it's too risky to get involved and invested in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies because they're so volatile and there's all these unknown risks and it's so new. Now people are recognizing that perhaps it's too risky not to get involved in cryptocurrency and to maintain dollar-backed assets. That's what's driving the price. And there's a finite amount of Bitcoin we can talk about as well. Supply and demand is a huge factor in this.
Right. And by the way, that is one of the things Saifedean is good on, because some people will say this is a terrible problem with Bitcoin because you'll have so-called deflation, which is just a phantom we should not be concerned about. And the really good economists like, Mises people and Saifedean are not buying into the deflation fears with Bitcoin or with anything else. So that's a separate matter. I want to talk about the average person being involved in any of this. Now, none of this is investment advice or anything like that, but we just want to talk about what the technical requirements are, what the mistakes that somebody might make would be. I mean, let's be frank about this. I assume you did not jump into this as the world's foremost expert, and maybe you did something wrong here and there. I'm guessing.
Yeah, most definitely. And that's why we put this workshop together that we're going to be delivering May 15th and 16th. People can sign up for it and learn more at cryptoandprivacy.com, cryptoandprivacy.com. It's not investment advice. What I focus on is the practical tips and strategies. I've made the mistakes. I've bought high and sold low. I've lost a considerable amount of cryptocurrency, having little errors here and there. I failed to hold on for dear life. There's so many people that think I'm like absolute millionaire, 100 times over. But the challenge was we had a lot of cryptocurrency come in and a lot of cryptocurrency would go out. Thankfully, I have more of an income now, so it's a different story. But yeah, I've learned a lot of lessons. One of them is I purchased Ethereum when it was a crowd sale, when you could get Ethereum in the very early days. It was 30 cents for one Ether. Ethereum is the number 2 market cap cryptocurrency. Bitcoin's digital gold, a place to store wealth and value and transfer large amounts of value. The transaction fee is irrelevant when you're sending $1 million or when you're buying a property or a Tesla vehicle, for example. Ethereum hopes to be this decentralized world supercomputer, which some people think will ultimately hold more value than a store of value. That remains to be seen. But, whenever you send something to an Ethereum address, there's a 0x at the beginning of the address, 0x. And so early on, I had a bunch of Ethereum and I sent some Ether to an address and I left out the 0x at the beginning of the address. And I tell you what, that Ethereum is now lost in the ether, inaccessible to me. It would probably be worth like 200 to 400 grand now.
John, I don't want to hear this story. No, this is
I
terrible.
probably would have held on to it anyway. That's another lesson that I like to teach. Hold on for dear life. Like there's still substantial price gains. People think that they missed the boat. I got news for you. The sails are yet to be set. But from that mistake, I learned a valuable lesson to do your research, understand how to send and receive the mechanics. And then a great tip that I have, this is something we'll share in the workshop, is whenever you copy an address, so these public addresses are kind of like your account number. A crypto wallet can generate an infinite number of addresses. Each address has a private key associated with it. And it's this key that unlocks the ability to send the cryptocurrency out of your public address. Well, my tip is anytime that you are going to send crypto to someone or you're going to receive crypto from someone, you always want to note when you copy that address, it's a long string of numbers and letters. You always want to note the first 2 letters and numbers and the last 2. So you copy it then you paste it in your wallet or you paste it into an email to send to someone. Once you copy it, then you paste it, you double check and make sure that you pasted the entirety of the address. Because sometimes when you get the address incorrectly, it just won't send. Sometimes it'll send and it'll go into the ether or wherever. So yeah, I've made a ton of mistakes and learned a lot of valuable lessons. And I'm very happy to share those with people because I think there's still a lot of opportunity. And as you know, we can make the world a more free place, when more libertarians have more wealth and are at least able to protect their wealth and grow their wealth. It really is a multiplier.
Yes, that's what we want, especially at a time like this where I think a lot of people are facing moral dilemmas at their job. They've seen that there are some entire industries that are much more vulnerable than we ever thought because all of a sudden they can just be shut down or have their capacity limited and so on. People have to think in different new ways at a time like this. So let's talk then I want to ask you about something that I didn't understand at first myself. You can go to something like Coinbase and buy some Bitcoin and keep it there on an exchange. But the real Bitcoin enthusiasts, they're going to be grinding their teeth when they find out about this because they're going to say, this defeats the whole purpose of holding Bitcoin. Don't do that. You need to have a private wallet or whatever. What is all this language? I mean, what is this? It seems to me that the benefit of something like Coinbase is that I don't have to worry that if my phone breaks, I lose $1 million. At least it's there on Coinbase at all times. Explain to me why that's the wrong way to think.
Yeah, this is what I like to call the dirty little secret that Coinbase and PayPal don't want you to know about their wallets. So this is absolutely critical, and I'm glad you brought it up. So there's custodial wallets and non-custodial wallets. Again, going back to the private key, every time you set up a wallet, a private key is generated, and from that private key, a public address is generated. You can generate an infinite number of these private key public address combinations. Whoever has access to the private key can have control over the cryptocurrency. So the challenge with a custodial wallet like Coinbase or PayPal, where a third party has access to that private key, is you don't truly have total control and only you control that cryptocurrency. Now, Coinbase is a reputable company. In fact, they're about to do an initial public offering, and I think they're already estimated to be one of the top 100 companies in the US, maybe even the world. They're trustworthy and reputable, but you never know at the end of the day. People early on trusted Mt. Gox, and they had their crypto in Mt. Gox. And Mt. Gox turned out to be a Ponzi scheme, basically, and failed. And people lost that crypto. There's still lawsuits over it going on to this day, right? And so the beauty about cryptocurrency is you don't have to trust a third party. You can finally have total control over your money. So while Coinbase and platforms like Coinbase are a wonderful on-ramp to get your cryptocurrency, it's really important once you have that cryptocurrency to then transfer it to a non-custodial wallet. I like Coinomi. It's a multi-wallet. It allows you to have multiple different types of cryptocurrency. Electrum is another good one for Bitcoin only. And now with great freedom comes great responsibility. So with Coinbase, if you send it to the wrong address or something like that, they can't get it back. But if there's some sort of error or you lose your password, they do have customer support. So when you are venturing into the world of 110% personal responsibility, you have to make sure that you take the appropriate steps to back up and secure your wallet. My girlfriend, for example, she doesn't like it when I tell the story. She dropped her phone in a porta potty back in the day. It had a 1.5 Bitcoin, which was worth $500 at the time, but it would be worth about $90,000 or $100,000 today. She dropped her phone in a porta potty and she didn't have her wallet backed up, which is why anytime I do a consultation with someone, I just beat them over the head with ensuring that we have the wallet backed up properly, because I have had crypto on a phone and the phone got smashed and I could no longer access it. The screen was all busted. All I got to do is download the wallet again, input my recovery phrase, which is a great piece of technology to back up your crypto wallets. And voila, I have access to my currency again. So yes, it's a little, it's safer in one regard to have it on Coinbase, but then it's less safe in another regard, especially with all the rebels in your audience. If someone comes under fire from the IRS or for some reason something gets seized or whatever, the federal government can lean on Coinbase and say, no. Sometimes Coinbase, like for me, a rebel that sells kratom, God forbid I sell a natural plant to help people, If I was using Coinbase, which I'm not, Coinbase could say, hey, wait a second, that's against our terms of service. We're going to hold your money until you do this, that, or the other. So it's just really important to have total control, to utilize cryptocurrency to the fullest, but to be aware that, like I said, with freedom comes responsibility. But that's why there's folks like myself. There's all sorts of wonderful guides online that will take you through this process. In fact, I set up a free mini course. So the workshop, it's a paid workshop. We're going to be delivering a whole lot of value. But if folks just wanted to set up a non-custodial wallet, they can go to setupacryptowallet.com, setupacryptowallet.com, and they could download and get access to the free mini course. I'm trying to make all these nice names like you do for all your landing pages.
Thank you.
It's not like tomwoods.com/this. It's like, oh, that's a pleasant way. That's exactly what I was thinking about. I'm just going to pop it in the URL. And
yeah, it's fun to discover .coms that haven't been claimed yet, because they're getting to be more and more like a needle in a haystack. Tell us about events that you're holding. Are these virtual events, first of all?
Yeah, so the workshop is virtual. Again, it's May 15th and 16th from 12 to 4 p.m. It's myself as the lead teacher, and then I brought on a couple other crypto experts. I'm going to go over the basics. I'm going to go over the tips and strategies. I'm going to go over everything that I've learned. I'm going to go over how to protect, how to acquire the crypto, how to hold it safely and securely, and then how to multiply it. That's going to be covered in large part by my buddy Matt McKibben from Decentranet. He's going to talk about decentralized finance, which is completely innovative. And then we have a bonus. My good friend Ramiro, he is going to be presenting on internet privacy, how to send encrypted communication, how to browse privately, VPNs, all that good stuff. And so, yes, that will be virtual. And we invite people to check that out. And then we have a couple big conference events that I'd love to tell you about. Those are coming up soon. Those are going to be pretty big deal.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's hear it.
So are you familiar with the Great Reset? I'm sure you've covered
I
this
did an
before.
episode on it with our friend Michael Rechtenwald, yes.
Right on. So the Great Reset is the World Economic Forum's marketing plan, essentially. What I like to call New World Order 2.0. It's like all of these old efforts to create global totalitarianism, but now the technology is available to really implement a panopticon surveillance society. And paradoxically, these technocrats are also utilizing blockchain technology, centralized blockchain technology for tracking and tracing, blockchain ID, sending tokens that give you access to a physical space, right? So this Great Reset aims to reshape society, reshape capitalism. They're really big on big government. There's, in fact, a little subchapter in Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum's book about the Great Reset, where he's just singing, we need the return of big government. There was too much liberalism, right? Like the free market kind of liberalism. And so anyway, most people are like, well, let's just talk about the Great Reset and let's study it. Let's publish content about it. We thought, hey, how about we study it to understand how we can opt out and navigate from it. But more importantly, we inspire people to have our own greater reset. That's what we're calling it. thegreaterreset.org, thegreaterreset.org. So we did this virtual and in-person conference at the end of January. We had over 150,000 people come through our website while we were doing the stream, which was pretty cool. And it since then inspired this whole movement. It's all about solutions. We focused wholeheartedly on solutions. The World Economic Forum and the powers that be want centralization. They want surveillance. They want control. So we are countering that with a message of decentralization, privacy, and freedom. So coming up once again, we're going to be doing the Greater Reset 2, and that's going to take place May 24th through the 28th. It will be virtual, which is what the World Economic Forum, they want everything to be virtual and folks to just be stuck behind their computer to interact with their fellow human beings. So it will be virtual so we can access a lot of people, but we're also going to have an in-person in Mexico. We're going to have an in-person in Austin, Texas, and we're encouraging people to set up watch parties. We have a big map with all the watch parties from all over the globe so people can see like, wow, there's folks in Spain and the Middle East and South Africa. This is great. So again, people can go to thegreaterreset.org. And then before that, we're doing one that's all about tech. It's called the Decentralized, Distributed, and Disruptive Technology Summit. The website is d3techsummit.com, d3techsummit.com. And at this event, we want to introduce our counter to the fourth industrial revolution, which is part of the Great Reset. It's the merging of biology and technology, not just humans, but also all biodiversity on Earth. They want to track, trace, catalog, control. This is a lot of the cap and tax and robotics, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things. And so we're going to counter that. Instead of the fourth industrial revolution, we want to highlight and accelerate the first decentralized evolution. So we'll be talking about blockchain technology, decentralized autonomous organizations, how people can acquire cryptocurrency privately. And so we're really just hoping to be a little check to what they're doing, offer some folks some inspiration. That's going to be April 24th and 25th, d3techsummit.com and thegreaterreset.org.
Wow. Well, that's some serious links there. So I'm going to put them all up at tomwoods.com/1877. So you can click on all of them and you'll know where everything John just described is to be found. One of the things I like about you is that you're a doer, not just a talker. And you had a major hand in all this stuff, or in some cases, it's exclusively your work. I mean, I don't know what more a person can do than what you've been doing with the freedom cells and everything else. I mean, you've been doing everything you can do. At least you can sleep at night, I assume. Like, you don't think to yourself, I could be doing more. No, actually, you couldn't. I don't think you could. So I hope people will check out some of the stuff that you've recommended. As I say, it'll all be at tomwoods.com/1877. If you have any parting words, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, I've been wanting to do an online course or digital workshop for quite some time. I really have a wealth of knowledge. I've made all of the mistakes, and I've made the mistakes. I'm a good educator, so I can teach you guys to avoid the mistakes. There really is a lot of opportunity. Even though we're at all-time highs, there's still substantial growth to be had. There's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin, and there's a lot of big money that's competing to get their hands on that finite amount of cryptocurrency. There's a lot of innovation to be had. We all know that the Federal Reserve is going to continue to run the printing press. So for folks that want to get involved now, it's not too late. For folks that maybe already have a nest egg and they want to protect that wealth from inflation, or most of their assets are in dollar-backed institutions, there's a lot of opportunity to not only protect wealth, but to grow wealth. And myself and the other two teachers have the information necessary to make sure that you can do it safely and securely, and you don't end up making a fatal mistake. And instead of gaining money, or protecting your money at least, you lose money. So that's really what it's all about, protecting people and encouraging this opportunity. And again, the website for the workshop, which will be May 15th and the 16th, is cryptoandprivacy.com. I actually don't sleep that good at night because my mind just never stops, and I struggle to clear my head, and I'm always thinking about the projects and what's going on and stressful this. So maybe I should take some more kratom.
I was just going to say. All right. Well, thanks a lot, John. I appreciate all your good work.
Thank you for having me, Tom.
Okay, everybody, tomorrow, oh, how fun is this going to be? We got Jay Bhattacharya from Stanford University, who is, of course, one of the three authors of the so-called Great Barrington Declaration, the heroic anti-lockdown statement. And I'm going to ask him a whole bunch of really interesting and important questions, most of which were submitted by members of my supporting listeners group, which is one of the perks you get. So check that out over at supportinglisteners.com, because from time to time I do solicit questions for certain guests in that group. And then, of course, we also have very good, ongoing, vigorous conversation in there. So supportinglisteners.com is the link. Episode 1878 will be the episode with Jay Bhattacharya, and you are absolutely not going to want to miss that. So I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Become a smarter libertarian in just 30 minutes a day. Visit tomwoods.com to subscribe to the show for free, and we'll see you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.